I've always liked starting the day with dough. At 6 a.m., the kitchen still holds the night's cool. An empty skillet on the stove, the table dusted with flour, November wind slipping in through the open window. The old radio hisses with a small-town FM station. I press my palm into the warm lump of dough, feel it push back with quiet breath, and think about the things you can't get back, and the ones that keep coming back anyway. Cinnamon in the air, the creak of our kitchen chairs, Ella's voice from the next room. In Hollow Creek, a small town in western Pennsylvania, the noises repeat like a prayer. The garbage truck at 5:40, the bus at 7:10, Mrs. Doyle next door taking her proud, stubborn goat out to milk at 7:30. I know the rhythm by heart. My routine is my cover. If my hands are busy, it's easier not to answer to memory. The phone lights up on the windowsill. In the college group chat, another video pops up. Ella walking across campus with her cheap backpack, filmed from behind, someone snickering off camera. Comments underneath about economy class and bonus points for the handicapped sister. I scroll past, pretending I'm not reading all the way through. Coffee bubbles in the little pot. Cinnamon melts on my tongue. And then someone knocks at the door. "Maddie, you're up." Mom peeks in, impossibly neat even after a night shift at Sheets. That dough's looking perfect again. Dough's got dignity. It doesn't argue, I say. She smiles, tired but warm. Ella's still asleep. She's 20, a sophomore at Hollow Creek College, where the glass library looks like a grounded airplane that's never leaving. We used to share a room. Now it's a narrow hallway between two small bedrooms. My wheelchair's backrest locks a bit tighter than it should. They laugh at me where I'm not. Sometimes they laugh where I am. Ella's the kind of pretty that falls just short of confidence. She can study, work, be kind. Her trouble is trusting people straight on, instead of sideways. When they first started joking, such a soft word, she threw jokes back. I thought it would be enough. But on campus, jokes flow downhill, toward the easiest target. At the top of that slope is Sloane Parker, daughter of a college trustee, father on the board, a shelf of baseball caps that don't suit her. Beside her, Tara, whose laugh sounds like an empty can kicked along asphalt. They saw Ella, clocked our old car, our modest house, and me, with my too bright display screen on the wheelchair where I sketch recipes and grocery lists, and decided Ella made a perfect subplot. I first saw Ben in the dining hall on a Friday, soup day, though the liquid they served didn't deserve the name, and mashed potatoes trying hard for respectability. I was at the window table, waiting for Ella. Through the glass, I saw Sloane texting, Tara already filming. Ella picked up a tray, tossed an apple on it, red as spite, and headed for an empty table. Someone stuck a foot out, careful enough to later say accident. Ella fell, the tray crashed, soup splattered. Laughter, camera flashes. Someone called it a social elevator. That's when Ben, gray hoodie, shoulders too serious for his age, stood up and said calmly, "Enough." He picked up the tray, helped Ella up, and shut off someone's phone with one precise motion. Not yanking, just hitting an invisible switch in the air. Sloane tried a smile. "And you are?" "Someone who's done watching," he said. "Ben Rivera. Nice to meet you. Now stop silence." There's always that moment in scenes like this when people choose between laughing and shame. The dining hall chose quiet. Then, other news, other clips. But for Ella, something shifted. For me, too. Ben came by that evening with a pizza bag and a bunch of silly paper flowers. "This is me," he said. "I don't know how to say don't worry, so I brought this." Mom poured tea. I sliced apple pie. "A guest should remember your house by the smell," my aunts always said. Ella laughed for the first time in a week without looking over her shoulder. Ben sat on the edge of my rug and asked about cinnamon recipes like I was his culinary professor. They started dating the way people do in small towns. No big declarations, but with rituals. Sundays, Ben brought coffee that worked on me better than therapy. I watched Ella grow a spine, straight, stubborn, no longer bent under other people's eyes. Sloane didn't quit. In her world, kindness was a threat to her power. She shifted to whispers in class, memes in group chats, sticky notes on bulletin boards. One day, I found a VIP parking sticker on my chair, peeled it off, rolled it into a ball, tossed it. These small things were the sediment no one saw, the silent buildup. I learned about the cancer on the kitchen rug. 3 apples peeled, the 4th slipped from my hand. A sharp pain, but nothing fatal. Ella came home from a 3-hour wait at the clinic. The smell of disinfectant stuck to her jacket. Sat on a stool, stared at her fingers, and said, "It's lymphoma. Early stage, they say. Treatable. Statistics. They're like someone else's weather forecast. Says rain, but your yard's still dry." "Maddie," I set the knife down, counted my breaths. "We'll handle it," I said. "You'll handle it, Ella." That "we" feels safe until it hits the calendar. That night, Ben showed up with a bag of oranges and a notebook titled Battle Plan. I might have laughed if I hadn't wanted to cry. It had lists of doctors, treatment schedules, grant searches, and a GoFundMe photo so awkwardly earnest I wanted to replace it with a shot of our warm kitchen. Treatment began like a long winter. Repetitive, small rituals. Tea on the table. Hat in the bag. Morning nausea. Ben was there because he didn't know how not to be. He held Ella's hand like it might save his own life. Maybe it did. Sloane vanished for a couple months, maybe regrouping, maybe hunting easier prey. Then she came back with a new angle. At the college open house in the big hall, a projector showed a video. Ella laughing, someone whispering, "Look how quick they monetize weakness." Sloane stood nearby, businesslike. The title read, "A Story of Strength." The edit mashed our kitchen, hospital corridors, and a cynical voiceover. There was a quick clip, Ben leaning into Sloane's car window, talking fast, cropped to look like a secret meeting. I stood there with a paper cup, watching Ella's face go still. She said quietly. I didn't answer. Ben had disappeared for 2 days that week, claimed he'd gone to Erie to see his sick aunt. I'd never been the type to check up on people, but I had eyes, and there was the video. The confrontation went public, right there in the hall. Ella walked up to Sloane like to a booth at a fair and asked, "Where'd you get that video?" "Oh," Sloane smiled at the camera like this was a show. "It was sent to us. Truth fans. You cut it." Ella's voice was steel. "You cut it to look like what?" Sloane tilted her head. "Like life?" People turned to look. Ben walked in late, saw it, went pale. Ella faced him. "You went to her?" "I went to her," he said, "to ask her to leave you alone. I recorded it for the dean's office. Ella, I thought I was doing the right thing." "You thought," she said, "but you didn't tell me." The clapping in the hall was for someone else's speech, but it felt like they were applauding our stupidity. A week later, Ella got called to student affairs. Aggressive behavior toward a donor could cost her scholarship. Campus security emailed me. Someone had filed a cyberbullying complaint against me, claiming I ran a fake account leaking Sloane's private photos. Sitting at the kitchen table, reading the formal language with my name in parentheses, I laughed. Nerves, not humor. At the bottom, an invitation to discuss the matter. I went, took a notebook, pen, thermos of tea, and patience. The man in the gray tie said, "We understand you're protecting your sister. But the form matters." "Form?" I nodded at his neat graphs on the wall. "Here's a form, lying, and here's another, silence. I didn't do what you're accusing me of, but I will share what I do have. Revenge is a pretty word on paper. In reality, it's work. Legal, if you're stubborn." I started small. Requests to the dean's office, emails, board meeting transcripts. The college had to hand some of it over by law. I read Title IX and ADA rules like recipes that would decide whether the bread rose. I kept a spreadsheet, dates, events, names. I followed a local Hollow Creek Gazette reporter who loved small-town corruption. Met her with cheesecake, printouts, and my tight, sharp speech. She listened, asked, "Do you have proof the video was edited? And that the complaint against you is fake?" Not yet, but I knew where to look. In the crumbs careless people leave behind. Meanwhile, Ella's chemo went on. Her hair fell out. We made jokes, picking hats, stripes for sarcasm, blue for hope, green for meetings with the dean. Ben stayed, drove her to treatments, slept on the window chair, brought ice cream on the rare days her stomach allowed. "I didn't cheat," he told me one night in the kitchen. "I was stupid. But not a coward." "I believe you," I said. "But no more solo moves." We agreed. Every text, every meeting, every tiny step. We'd review together. The break came in June. Sloane posted a pool party story. Fireworks. Laughter. The camera swung past her laptop screen. a folder labeled a DA underscore fundraiser underscore 2024 underscore final, and right next to it, raw underscore edit underscore ben.mp4. The clip was gone in minutes, but I'd already saved it. Careless arrogance kills the powerful. They think their drafts are private. They forget about reflections in windows. The Gazette reporter perked up like a cat spotting movement under a rug. We got the complaint file from the service provider. The IP address matched the Parker family home. I filed another request. Scholarship committee records. Found overlaps. The same students accidentally getting grant extensions were on Sloane's birthday guest list. We set a date for publication, Founders' Day, when the hall's full of donors, press, and that careful gaze of the local elite. I don't believe in bombshells. I believe in schedules and receipts. The night before, I baked lemon pie. Nerves need sugar. Ella was home, tired but joking about finally getting famous for your cinnamon rolls. Ben brought sunflowers. He said he was scared, and I knew he was leaving much unsaid. Founders' Day smelled like expensive fabric on old chairs. On stage, the dean smiled like a TV doctor. In the crowd, me, Ella in her green hat, Ben in a gift shirt from his aunt. I knew the article would drop at 11:05. At 11:10, whispers. At 11:15, the dean's eyes would find the crowd and say more than words. At 11:04, my phone buzzed. The Gazette headline was quiet but lethal. Systemic charity. How Hollow Creek College's Accessibility Fund served its own. Screenshots, Sloane's leaked chats, log files, all precise, unflinching. By 11:11, a cold front passed through the room. The dean stumbled over responsibility. Sloane sat pale beside her father. He left to make calls like a man speaking to firefighters. Tara stared into her phone. I didn't stand, didn't cheer. I just held Ella's hand, watched our small town inhale differently. No fireworks, just the same kind of silence Ben once brought into the dining hall. Next day, letters arrived. Ella's warning lifted for lack of merit. The complaint against me labeled improper and filed in conflict of interest. The scholarship committee suspended. Sloane, temporarily withdrawn pending investigation. Her father resigned from the board. The Gazette interviewed us without drama. Comments read, "We knew. We saw." Of course, everyone always knows. The trick is to write it down, collect it, store it. I should have felt triumphant. And I did. For a minute. Then something else came. Lymphoma plays the long game. 18 months of treatment feels endless, until the calendar turns into scissors cutting away the edge you're holding. Ella lived that span like dough. Knead it. Let it rest. Wait. Don't forget the oven. We listened to rain, made soups, laughed at neighbor drama, argued over small things, maybe to avoid drowning in pity. When the last came, a word no one says, I remember the light. 6 p.m., May, a thin curtain shadow. Ben sat holding her hand in both of his, like trying to keep a skater from falling. I was by the window. We were silent, finally in a way that made sense. Ella left like someone apologizing for being late. Inside me, a room went empty, soundless. I didn't know how to plan a funeral when my head held a grocery list. Bread, flowers, paper plates. People came, spoke, brought casseroles. Ben stood beside me, silent in a way that made me want to hit him, just to make him say something rough, alive. A week later, he was gone. I won't write how. It doesn't matter. What matters is why. He couldn't bear it. Love isn't always strength. Sometimes it's weight. On the kitchen counter, still smelling of pie from the memorial, I found his note. 3 sentences. One was, I'm sorry. I thought I could be stronger. The other 2, for me alone. I sat with the note next to the cinnamon bread recipe, the 5th version he loved most, and felt everything we'd built twist into a tight knot. After his funeral, I went back to the table, wiped it down, laid out paper, pulled my to-do list. Not to take someone down anymore, just to close the page. Investigations followed the Gazette story. Sloane tried fighting back. New lawyer, new press release claiming she was defamed. Her fatal error came at a disciplinary hearing. Her lawyer submitted a flash drive with the full unedited video. The drive's metadata showed the folder names and montage authors. Too much unwanted honesty. The committee paused, then ruled expulsion. Probation for obstructing the investigation. Lost her Senate internship, her ticket to the adult world. The dean resigned for health reasons. The scholarship committee got new leadership, people who used to ask for the floor from the back row. The Gazette reporter won a regional prize. She texted me a lemon emoji. I sent her a recipe. Mom switched to day shifts. The goat next door got sold. The town moved on to its next headline, a bar fire by the highway. People lived as they do, from one story to the next. I stayed. I don't like the word alone. Sounds like an accusation. I like quiet. Quiet is making soup without needing it to comfort anyone. Baking bread and eating it with silence that isn't empty anymore. I started writing recipes in a thick yellowed notebook like my grandma had in Ohio. Sometimes girls from the college drop by, ones who used to pretend not to know me. We cut apples at the table. They tell me about new Sloans. I give them attorney numbers and request templates like their spice blends you should always have ready. Sometimes I tune into the station where Ben used to play his sad playlists. The host reads off names that matter right now, and the world keeps going. I don't believe in emotional release as fireworks. I believe in things you can do with your hands. Mix, wait, bake, share. That summer, I went to the lake, the one where students roast marshmallows and film just like everyone's stories. Sat on the shore, watched boys throw rocks and thought, water's the best archive. It keeps some things, lets others sink. You just have to know what to throw and what to keep. Back home, rain fell light as a warning. I set the kettle on, took out flour, mixed, salted, poured warm water. The dough sat in my hands like it knew it would come out right again. I worked in the quiet, unhurried. On the wall, Ella in her green hat. On the fridge, a sunflower magnet. I don't hide these. They're not scissors now. They're thread. In the fall, the college's new accessibility chair called. Asked if I'd run a small workshop on navigating the system for freshmen. I almost said no. Then I remembered Ella holding Ben's hand at the window. Yes, I said. But no words like motivation or inspiration, just checklists and cookies. The classroom smelled like markers and coffee. I wrote on the board, trust images less than people. And people, with a note on the lighting. The students laughed. Some asked about public record request templates. Some about chemo hats. We shared tools like we were swapping kitchen utensils. At the end, I put a box of cinnamon rolls on the desk. A girl in the back, hair in a messy bun, eyes like Ella's at 19, came up and just said, "Thank you." I nodded. Walking out, I saw the glass library catching the early sun, cold, clear. Leaves swirled in the wind. On days like this, even a quiet town sounds like an orchestra that's been practicing all night. I breathed in time with it. I have no illusions about justice, but I have tools, recipes, and memory. And yes, the sense that I'm ready for a new life. Not because I won or survived, but because I learned to wait for my time. That's my slow burn. Not revenge, order. Not disaster. The kitchen. At home, I set the dough again. My fingers remember the moves like music remembers melody after a pause. Dough has dignity. It doesn't argue. So do I. And if someone calls it monetizing weakness tomorrow, I'll just pull out the notebook, the spreadsheet, the contact list, and put the kettle on. It's not a happy ending. It's an evening where the bread cracks just right. Enough to stop looking over my shoulder at the door. Enough to live.